Another day, another video of college students complaining about how everything is racist and how the system is against people of color. But Charlie Kirk debunks all of that nonsense. But as I usually say, I am not going to talk anymore, so let us get into the video.
So let me ask you a question. So in the CRT literature, what do they think of white people or whiteness?
Who would you like me to quote?
Kimberly Crenshaw.
I haven't read Kimberly Crenshaw.
She says that whiteness is a cancer or a toxin on our society.
The concept of whiteness, the racial concept of whiteness.
Okay, so what is whiteness?
What is whiteness?
Yeah, define it.
As Kimberly Crenshaw would probably say, the sort of construction of privilege that comes with being white in this country.
Right, so what privilege do you and I as white people have that black people don't have?
Yeah, great question. On applications that are blindly judged, white-sounding names are often given the job more, they're paid more.
Not true. In fact, it's the opposite. There's black privilege right now. It's called affirmative action, where underqualified blacks are taking Asians and white people's places in universities across the country. True or false?
True.
Okay, so yeah, there's black privilege, not white privilege in this country.
Do they not think in their mind hard and deep before they say anything? Because she just went on to say that white people have inherent privileges, and then Charlie Kirk points out where black people have some privileges, and she agrees. Make it make sense. These people just follow the narrative that has been pushed upon them for decades and decades of indoctrination after indoctrination and propaganda after propaganda, that they all just say the exact same points and don't even know what they're arguing about.
I think affirmative action is how we address education inequality.
Okay, well that affirmative action is still largely supported by the CRT regime. But let's get back to CRT, to the essence of it.
Sure.
CRT believes in one manifestation of its ideology is black-only dormitories. So white people are not allowed. Do you believe in black-only dormitories?
No, and I don't have to agree with every aspect of an ideology to argue for it.
So then what part of CRT do you like? Because they call whiteness a toxin, black-only dormitories, and if you want to talk about like ideological or intellectual sloppiness, the 1619 Project was...
I think it's very sloppy.
Okay, we agree. Nicole Hannah-Jones.
I think it's overstated, and I think some of the parts are inaccurate.
Okay, good.
The parts of CRT that I think are most relevant and, very factually, you can, what am I trying to say? There's a lot of evidence for them, is the fact that previous inequalities, such as the institution of slavery, such as our treatment of Native Americans, do in fact affect those populations today. And you were saying before, in inner cities, there's a lot more crime, and a lot of that is because of redlining and other practices that come directly from the mistreatment of minorities previously in this country.
So I want to make sure I understand. So black people make up 13% of the American population.
Oh, 1350, my favorite.
Yes, exactly. Why do they commit 55% of all the murders?
Super great question. It's basically a very complex intersection of race and economic status. It's pretty well known that minority people tend to be in a lower economic status because of discrimination that they face.
So then why don't poor Asians commit a lot of murders?
Also a great question. Asian people weren't originally brought to America on purpose like black people, and they weren't already present here like natives.
Wait, so blacks murder because they were brought here 250 years ago?
These college students do not have a clue of what they're talking about, and as I've said, all they do is follow the propaganda that has been taught to them. There also were Asians who were brought here in replacement of black people as well, and they also face racism. But for some reason, Asians were able to come out of the victimhood and the complaining about things, and now they're one of the top demographic in the United States who do well financially. But of course, it doesn't follow the narrative of how people are oppressed and minorities and people of color are oppressed. It doesn't follow their narrative. So once something goes off of their narrative, they get confused and say nonsense like this student did.
To finish.
Okay, just answer. It's very simple.
I am answering.
No, I know, but you're not really.
I am. Asian Americans predominantly immigrate here for work reasons. They come from already wealthy countries. They're already wealthy when they get here. Crime is committed primarily by poorer people.
First of all, that's not true. Talk to anybody from who's Vietnamese? Anybody? Did your family come here wealthy?
No.
Yes and no.
Not wealthy, but not.
Yes
I'm not
or
saying
no?
they come
No.
here. Okay.
The average Vietnamese does not come here wealthy.
I'm not. Okay. I perhaps misspoke. Not wealthy, but a lot of the, you complain about it all the time. A lot of the immigration from countries that border us, right? It's sort of desperate people who are of a lower economic status, right? And they're coming here for a better life.
So two things. Number one, there's been more blacks that have legally immigrated to this country in the last 30 years than were ever brought as slaves. That's number one. Number two, you still haven't answered the question.
I'm trying to.
Why?
It's a complicated answer.
Black people are only 13% of the population, yet they commit 55% of the murders. Why?
Because black people tend to be in lower economic statuses because of
Okay, no, this
CRT.
is fine. This is great.
Basically,
so you think that poverty equals crime?
I think that it's highly correlated.
If we follow the logic of what she's saying, it would stand to reason that being poor correlates with crime. It's really that simple. I don't know why it's so hard for her to say that. Following her logic, she's saying the reason black people commit so many crimes is because they're poor. So therefore, being poor means you commit more crime. So why don't we see other races causing the same amount of crime as black people who are of the same economic status as them? As I've said again, and I'm sorry to keep pausing it, but it does not suit the agenda, and they don't want to address the root cause of the issue. They just want to blame other people.
This is where we disagree. What an insult to the working poor of this country.
So why do you think black people commit more crime,
Well, first
Charlie
of all,
Kirk?
so how? Let me ask you a question as
No,
my
answer it. Go on.
What percentage of blacks have a father around when they're raised?
I'm not sure.
20%.
So that's why you
80% of
think it is.
blacks do not have a stable father around.
Before we get back into the video, I need everyone to turn on their post notifications so that you get notified whenever one of my videos come out. Like the video as much as possible, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow me on Twitter at YinkaThatGuy. Let us get back into the video.
It is the most predictable way to end up in prison, end up as a murderer or a criminal.
And why
It's
do
not a
you think that's
racism
a problem?
It's not a white supremacy problem. It's a fact that black fathers impregnate women and they don't stay around with the women
And
that they have
why-
impregnated.
Charlie Kirk, do you think that happens more in the black community compared to others?
It's threefold. Number one, we subsidize single motherhood. Number two, it's culture. It's accepted in the black community, and it
so
shouldn't
it's
be.
culture. Okay.
Bingo. That's exactly one of the major factors that cause the rubbish that's going on with the black community. It is the culture. And the reason you don't want to address that is because once we say it's the culture, it places a mirror on the community and the people to take accountability for their actions, which the woke do not like to do. They don't like accountability. They love blaming other people. One of the major causes to the rubbish that goes on is the culture. And you don't want to address that because number one, you've been propagandized to believe otherwise. And number two, you do not like to take accountability for your actions because everything is not your fault. It's someone else's.
For it, read Thomas Sowell's own book on how black culture allows single motherhood to continue into a nanny state type practice. 75% of black youth are raised without a father in the home. 75%. Is that a bigger problem or not a bigger problem than whiteness, white privilege, or white supremacy?
They should all be addressed, and they're all related.
Okay, how is a white person to blame for the fact that 75% of blacks...
Oh, individual white people aren't at all to blame.
Okay, we agree.
Yeah.
So, but wouldn't it be more like smarter to be like, hey, that this is not about systemic racism. Like, stop impregnating your women and abandoning them?
Well, the way to incentivize not impregnating women and abandoning them is increasing access to healthcare, into housing, into everything that we know increases those outcomes for people.
So we have spent $30 trillion on the social welfare system since 1965. Black people are poorer, and the single motherhood went from 25% to now 75 to 80%. So the more money we've spent on black America, the less fathers we have, because black women divorced black men and married the government.
And do you think that's a problem inherent to black people?
No, it's not. It's happening now in white communities and Hispanic communities. It's just the worst in black America.
And why do you think that is?
Why is it the worst in black America? There's also a cultural problem. There is, and we have to be honest about it.
It's just that black people are
No, let me ask you a question.
Like
The average music that a black person in Compton is listening to, is it about contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful, or is it about being a gangbanger and trying to get as much money and sleep with as many girls as you can?
I would actually like to think I would be offended by that.
Do you think the average black kid in Compton is listening to Beethoven or some sort of gangster rap music that glorifies gangster culture?
Silly question.
What people need to realize about these types of people, and unfortunately there's a lot of them in today's world in the West, is that once they're asked a question that they don't know the answer to, or they can't answer, or they know the answer to, but because of their pride they don't want to answer it, they say it's a silly question or it's a dumb question. As I've said, they don't want to address the root cause of the issue. Charlie Kirk brought up a very, very, very great point, that the culture in majority of the black community is not a great culture, and it perpetuates all of the nonsense and the degeneracy that's going on in the culture. He asked her a simple question as to what type of music do you think that they listen to majority of the time, and she says it's a silly question. We all know the answer, and she knows the answer to that question, but because she knows she doesn't want to tell the truth, and as I've said, these people hate the truth, she says it's a silly question. Culture plays a huge part, if not being the number one reason or motivation as to how human beings interact with each other and how they act. But of course, as I said, they don't want to hold people accountable. They just want to complain about other people and give people more money because it's not their fault.
Created to glorify gangster culture. So even though there is
Okay,
rap,
I mean,
I'm sure
you're not
that's
answering,
doing
you're
that.
dodging the question because...
Okay, I'm sure they're listening to rap.
Okay.
So you think
there
rap
go.
music makes them
No,
leave
I'm
their
not.
mom?
Do you think the cultural expectation in Black America is that you stay with the woman that you impregnate?
Within black communities? I can't speak on that.
Okay, the answer is no. It's not. It's not expected.
Okay, and do you think that is...
Hold on. In white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities, it's a
okay.
fact. Hold on. In upper middle class white communities...
Upper middle class. Say that part louder.
Yeah, upper middle class white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities, if you impregnate a woman, you are looked down upon and we do not think highly of you if you abandon the woman that you impregnate. That's a cultural difference. Has nothing to do with money. Has nothing to do with anything except norms. And the norms that have infected Black America are destroying it from within. We need more fathers, not less. We need more dads around and less drag queen story hour. We need more young blacks to be able to look up to role models that are not leaving all the time and are not just saying, hey, I impregnated her, so be it. It's a toxin, and if we don't address that as the root cause, oh, it's white supremacy, it's injustice, it's economics, we're dancing around the core of the issue.
I guess what I'm saying is, right, and you've perfectly actually laid out the dichotomy here. It is a fact, obviously, that black people disproportionately commit crime in this country. No one's arguing that. But you either believe that that is due to a complex intersection of social, economic, and like leftover effects from previous inequalities, or you believe that that is an inherent trait to the race.
No, I don't. Because they weren't that way in the 1940s and 50s. Black America was one of the most peaceful, flourishing, fastest growing economically communities in the country. It's not genetic. You're trying to point something on me that I don't believe. Instead,
but then
Black
you do
America,
believe that it's not genetic, so you do think CRT is correct.
Hold on a second.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
In the 1940s and 1950s, Black America was prosperous and was on pace to be richer and wealthier than white America. More dads were staying with the women that they were with. There was monogamy. What changed?
You're supporting my argument.
No, hold on. But answer the question. What changed? Did America get more racist since the 1950s?
I would argue there were more racist policies passed. There were more policies dedicated to lining off those communities and pushing them into poor housing and poor schools.
Wait a second. In the 1950s, Jackie Robinson had not even broken the color barrier. We had Jim Crow laws. We hadn't passed the Civil Rights Act, and we hadn't passed the Voting Rights Act. Yet blacks were better in the 1950s per capita than they are today.
These people will continue to complain about things that are relevant to the issues that's going on with people of color, as they so-called love to call them. They'll continue to point to nonsense that's non-existent while completely avoiding the root cause of the issue, as per usual with these people. But anyway, that was another video, another reaction. As I usually say, if you guys enjoyed the video, like the video as much as possible, comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow me on Twitter/X at YinkaThatGuy, and I am out.